In the wee hours of Wednesday morning, Senate Democrats pushed through the $3.5 trillion budget blueprint. This comes as Senate Republicans blocked the latest attempt by Democrats to advance a sweeping voting overhaul bill known as For the People Act. Taliban forces kicking into high gear after U.S. forces and other international forces begin their withdrawals in May. 9 provincial capitals have fallen to the Taliban. President Biden says he doesn't regret his decision pulling out, saying it's now up to the Afghan forces to hold the line. And 52 Texas Democrats have warrants out for their arrest. That's after they left the state to block Republican-led election reforms. Tune into Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. Lots happening on Capitol Hill, so let's start there. President Biden praising the powers of bipartisanship after the Senate passed a sweeping $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure package Tuesday. But it might be a while before President Biden can sign it into law.
After years and years of infrastructure week, we're on the cusp of an infrastructure decade.
But House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she won't bring it up for a vote until another more ambitious policy package, expected to have only Democratic support, also passes the Senate. Democrats immediately turn to the next part of Biden's economic agenda, with hopes of passing a $3.5 trillion budget blueprint that would in turn advance the priorities they left on the cutting room floor of the bipartisan talks.
The two-track strategy is proceeding full steam ahead.
The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and it includes $550 billion in new federal spending over 5 years. And early Wednesday morning at 3:58 a.m., Senate Democrats pushed through the $3.5 trillion budget framework without any Republican support. The 50-49 party line vote came after a lengthy series of amendment votes known as a vote-a-rama.
The Democratic budget will bring a generational transformation to how our economy works for average Americans.
The budget, dubbed Human Infrastructure, includes childcare, free community college, universal pre-K, and a pathway to citizenship for certain illegal immigrants. It's a crucial step for President Biden's Build Back Better agenda.
So we're hoping both of these bills will get to the president's desk in September so he can sign them both. We can make both of them law.
They plan to pay for it by raising taxes on the wealthy and corporations. Republicans denounced the $3.5 trillion budget, which has yet to be drafted. Senator James Lankford calling it a reckless spending spree that will accelerate the national debt. The House plans to vote on the fiscal blueprint in about a couple weeks. If the democratically controlled House also approves it, the budget resolution will open the door for Democrats to use a process called budget reconciliation for legislation on health care, the climate crisis, and more. That would effectively cut the votes needed to pass such bills in the Senate from 60 to 51, a threshold which requires 0 Republican support because it squashes the party's ability to filibuster. An official reconciliation plan to unlock that ability would be several weeks away. Democrats plan to use it to establish universal pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds, make community college free for 2 years, add new dental and vision benefits to Medicare, invest in affordable housing, and establish a civilian climate corps. The House is slated to return on August 23rd and will consider the budget resolution then. And also early Wednesday morning, Senate Republicans blocked the latest attempt by Democrats to advance a sweeping voting overhaul bill. Texas Senator Ted Cruz blocked Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's attempt to bring up the For the People Act. GOP lawmakers believe states should maintain control over their voting processes without federal overreach. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell previously said about the bill, what this is really about is an effort for the federal government to take over the way we conduct elections in this country. The Constitution gives state legislatures the primary power over running elections. Democrats say federal intervention is necessary because many states are passing laws that restrict voting access. Schumer says his party has been discussing a compromise bill on voting rights that might be more likely to win Republican support. He vowed to take it up when the Senate returns to session next month. Now, as for the bill, S1 or For the People Act, the nearly 900-page bill would expand voter registration, require 15 days of mail-in and early voting, and limit states from removing voters from voter rolls. It would also make states implement automatic voter registration and allow same-day registration on any voting day. In the wake of a contentious 2020 election, many red states put forward measures to secure elections. That's by restricting mail-in voting and adding more ID requirements. On the other hand, Democrats are attempting to make permanent the emergency voting procedures used as a result of the pandemic. Now, let's talk about international ramifications for a moment, namely the U.S. pulling troops from Afghanistan. After the endless war, U.S. troops are still set on leaving by the end of the month. But in that time, the Taliban has been busy. The Taliban appear to have captured more territory in Afghanistan as their lightning offensive pushes on. Officials say 3 more provinces fell, bringing the number of fallen provincial capitals up to 9. The insurgents now control some 2/3 of the nation. Embattled Afghan President Ashraf Ghani is now formally enlisting the help of local warlords, and he's urging civilians to rise up against the Taliban. This comes as U.S. and NATO finalize their withdrawal. On Tuesday, Biden told reporters he did not regret his decision to withdraw.
We spent over $1 trillion over 20 years. We trained and equipped with modern equipment over 300,000 Afghan forces. And Afghan leaders have to come together. We lost death and injury, thousands of American personnel. They've got to fight for themselves, fight for their nation.
Biden said the U.S. will continue to provide air support and pay Afghan fighters salaries. He says the Afghans have outnumbered the Taliban, and he says there's still a possibility the Afghans will be successful because their new so-called warlord is a serious fighter. The White House said the goal in Afghanistan to disrupt terrorist activity has been achieved, thus the withdrawal. And the administration said a Taliban takeover is preventable and that Afghans need to have the will to push back. And mixed responses. Some support the withdrawal. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said of the Afghan security forces, it's their country to defend now. This is their struggle. And a recent poll by the Hill and Harris X found the majority of Americans at 73% also support the withdrawal, 27% oppose. Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Senator Bob Menendez told Axios that while he respects President Biden, he disagrees with the plan. He told the outlet, quote, I always thought that a contingency would have stemmed the tide. The president has to consider whether what's happening is what he envisioned. And an Afghan activist is saying, quote, everything is at stake.
I keep getting calls from like all over who just keep asking, can you help us? Can you help us get out of Afghanistan? The composition of the militants on the ground, you would understand that it's not our war. It's a global terror right now.
And now, turning back to the U.S., let's drop in on the Lone Star State. 52 Texas Democrats all have warrants out for their arrest. Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan signed them. The Texas Supreme Court has ruled that if the representatives don't show up, law enforcement could detain them and bring them back to the state capitol. The move comes after at least 24 Democrats fled to Washington. They were trying to block a Republican-led election reform bill by running out the clock on a special session. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says the Democrats were trying to undermine the Constitution and avoid doing their jobs. Democrats say they will fight for an injunction in court. They said in a statement that the governor and House Speaker want to arrest political opponents and that they are defending the freedom to vote. And before we end, it's time once again for one of the best shows offered by the cosmos. The Perseid meteor shower will peak from midnight Wednesday to dawn on Friday. Viewing should be especially optimal because the moon is at a crescent phase and will be setting early. That will create dark conditions that allow the shooting stars to be seen more easily. Stargazers in the northern hemisphere should be able to see up to 40 meteors per hour. Of course, that all depends on light pollution in the area. The further one is from a city, the more likely one can see fragments from Comet Swift-Tuttle blaze across the night sky. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.